Hi, and welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. I'm Chris Lucian, and Austin Chadwick is the co-host. And today we're here with Scott Fulton, and we're going to be talking about his journey, agile thinking, protecting the team. And so, Scott, maybe you can introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about your journey.
Hi, thanks for having me. So, I was working for Avon and Somerset Police in the UK for 20 years, and that ended last year when I left to set up my own company. And for that 20 years, I was leading a development team, building public-facing services, digitizing transactions for the general public, so reporting crime online, tracking crime online, all those kind of good things. Some really quite innovative stuff, if I don't say so myself, but the team deserve all the credit for that, obviously. And the very few police forces in the UK, and there's 42 of them, have development teams. So we were quite rare in our industry. And we saw real benefit by having that in-house capability to be agile, and I use that with a capital A, to very fast-paced organization, as you can imagine, operational demands changing all the time. So we needed that flexibility to be able to say, right, this new opportunities come in. COVID, for example, has hit. What are we going to do? How can we digitize that process for the public to report COVID breaches, etc.? So Agile for us really probably started about 10 years ago, and we were in a really bad place as a team. We were juggling multiple projects. The team was stressed out. I was being asked to give commitments to deliver within 8 months' time and not to miss that deadline. The classic way of treating development and thinking that it's all predictable, and the developers in the basement locked away, not seeing daylight. It was all that kind of stuff. And it was difficult and it was frustrating, and the team were trying their best, and I was trying to protect them, but we were just in a really bad place. And we actually bought a book, an Agile book. Can't remember the name of it offhand. It's got a picture of a glass with the branches growing out. You may know it. Some of your listeners may know it, but I didn't read it. I just put it on the shelf. I thought, this Agile stuff's probably helpful, and then put the book on the shelf. I have this habit of feeling somehow I can absorb its knowledge by not actually reading it. So that didn't help. But luckily, my lead developer at the time, a guy called Peter Bridger, he won't mind me mentioning him. We're always giving credit for this. He said, Scott, someone needs to change, doesn't it? Because we're all just burnt out and stressed, and people are just demoralized. He said, can I take this Agile book home? Because we're so busy, we didn't have time to read it in the day. So he took it home and he digested it probably in a couple of weeks and brought back to me this very well presented notebook with color-coded diagrams, and just explained it to me in a way that I, as the product manager, I should have said I was product manager, product owner for the team, could understand. And we said, there's something here. I think we can use this, and things can be different. So we brought in a consultant. He told us all about Agile within a week, and then our world started to change. And actually, I made the mistake, as I think many organizations and people do, is thinking it's all about the processes. So I literally was obsessing about estimates, and I cringe to be admitting this now. But focus on, why aren't we hitting our estimates? And it was just completely wrong. And I learned over that journey, painfully, that it wasn't about that. It was about a mindset change. And that's probably a whole other talk. I know we're here to talk about mobbing specifically. So we went through that journey and started to say, actually, my team started to say, we think we should look at pair programming. And I was like, what's pair programming? Never heard of that. And they explained it to me. This is actually Pete again explained it and said, two developers sit together at a keyboard. And my first reaction was, oh, that's not very efficient, is it? What are people going to think when they walk in the office and go, why have you got two highly paid developers working on one keyboard? Separate them and get them coding, because everyone thinks it's about the volume of code you write, yeah? So I went back to Agile principles and said, listen to the team. They're self-organizing. They're usually right. Have some faith. And I said, okay, let's give it a go. And we started. And the code quality started to improve, surprise, surprise. And developers started to feel they were learning from each other. And I think there were a couple of devs that didn't like it, if I'm being honest. they wanted to be the dev in the corner with the headphones on, just plugging away at code, and didn't really want to share or, sit and watch someone else coding. I can kind of get that, and some devs are like that. But on the whole, the team kind of took to it quite well. I'll pause because I'm in danger of rabbiting on about the next phase. Can I just check if you've got any thoughts, questions on anything I've said so far? Or I'm happy to keep going.
Yeah, no, it's this is all really fascinating. You're doing great. Keep going.
Cool. Okay. So the pair programming, we carried on and we made that pretty much a rule. Probably, I think I had 6 devs at the time, so it's a fairly good split. And yeah, it worked. The lead dev kind of flitted between the pairs and asked for, they asked for help, and he gave them some guidance and so on and so forth. So that was going quite well. We still had quite a few bugs though coming in, and of course I'm product owner going, oh, we're building up technical debt, and the code wasn't as good as it could be. So they came back to me, it was probably about 6 months later, and said, we want to do mob, the pair programming, we want to do mob programming. And I was like, what the hell's that? That sounds a bit violent. We're a police force, we can't have a mob, what's this? So again, they explained it to me and said, we sit with 2 devs at one keyboard. What if the whole team sat at one keyboard? And I was like, oh, geez, how am I going to explain that? And someone comes in and goes, why the hell have you got 6 developers paid quite a significant amount of money sat at one keyboard? Because people think it's about, it's that classic industrial age production line, more hands on the keyboard, produce more code, produce more stuff. But by then I'd learned it's not about that. It's about quality first, because if the quality's there, I don't have to write bugs for the backlog to be fixed. We can actually get better value out to people. So again, I thought, remember the principles, try it. The team are usually right. So we tried it, and we set up a big screen, bought a big screen for the office. It was a bit cramped, so they were all sat behind me in a huddle. I remember quite well. Our chairs were like banging as I was trying to deal with emails and stuff. But it started to do this mobbing, and I'm a massive fan. It's probably why I'm here. It was transformational. So I think after we got properly established, I think the bug rate, I was probably adding 1 or 2 bugs to each sprint after we'd done a release during the pairing phase. But once mobbing got really established, I think I added 1 bug in 6 months.
That's amazing.
The team's quality of code was so much better. And of course, all the benefits I'm sure you've talked about on other episodes with other people, the team were happy, they were motivated, they were learning from each other. And I kind of summarize it to say, why wouldn't you want multiple brains trying to solve a problem with multiple experiences? So yeah, that was kind of the journey. And we carried on with mobbing for a good few years before I left. If I'm being honest, it kind of fell by the way sometimes. We split off, and we had some behavior which wasn't what it was meant to be. So as my understanding of it, the person at the keyboard, or the driver, is meant to take instructions from the team. But what we saw emerging quite often was they were doing the thinking and the team started to disengage. And I think that's probably around attention span. The devs were coming in 9 to 5, sat there in a huddle, staring at a screen, swapping fairly regularly. But yeah, so that's the journey in a nutshell. I feel I've rabbited on.
Yeah, no, you're good. So I have a question. Did you have other outside stakeholders come in and see this and question you about it? How did you explain it to people outside of your immediate team? What challenges and successes did you see there?
Yeah, so I was always quite open about it. So I kind of preempted those challenges. And to be fair, I don't think I really had them, because I think in parallel to our journey from really bad place, not delivering anything, demoralized team, organization turning against us, saying, you're paid a lot of money, why are we not seeing the stuff we've asked you to do?
Yeah.
To actually being a team that was delivering, and the organization felt that impact, we started to build trust from the organization that I think we'd lost quite early on. And actually, I do remember I presented to my new boss who came in at the time, a director of IT, and I explained it. I was quite upfront, said, it probably looks to you, because we were sat in the room, we had a much bigger office at this time. It probably looks to you like crazy. Why are there like 6 developers sat there around one keyboard? And I just explained it quite passionately, like I do, and hopefully like I have just now, because it's all about the quality of the code. It's about all the stuff I've talked about. And to his credit, he said, it's not for me to tell you how to do your job or your team to how to do their job. So I had his backing as well. I think we just didn't get questioned anymore. And I actually got stopped asking to give deadlines, because I would, again, be open and say, I can't give you a deadline because I don't know. It's really complex. But what I can tell you is in the next few days or weeks, you'll start to see some outcomes and some benefits. You won't have to wait 6 months, because we'll break it down and all that good stuff. So yeah, I didn't really get challenged. I think only because if I'd come in cold and said, we're doing this, I might have got some challenge, but because we'd been on that journey and I've been transparent about it and they'd felt the difference, I didn't see that tension or those challenges.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Austin.
Oh no, yeah, I was just going to say that's very helpful information. And another question I had was just to clarify real quick. You are a product person and not a coder, is that right? Or you do a little bit of both, or?
Yeah, so I'm not a coder at all.
Okay.
When I first started, I did build their first police website back in January 2000 using my limited ability in HTML and Dreamweaver version 3, I think it was at the time, but rapidly realized coding was not for me when it started to hit databases. So UltraDev didn't save me. Luckily, I had a retiring police officer who happened to dabble with coding on the side. He came to help me in the second year. And then I put in a bid for a proper team because I was just out of my depth. So I've very much been a business lead, strategic lead, product manager. So I class myself as a product guy. I'm quite, I like to solve problems and present the problems to the devs, and then they do their magic. So that was my job, translating, customer needs into stuff that the devs can work on. That's what I did for those 19 years in the police.
Now, were you in the mob rotation? Were you there with the team the whole time, or were they mobbing and you were maybe meeting in stand-ups with them? Like, what was the day-to-day like at the height of mobbing for you and your team?
So we were located in the same office, and I know this isn't always the case in some organizations. I was their line manager as well, and I know that can cause tension, but I'd like to think I didn't let that happen. I saw my job as protecting the team from all the noise and all the politics and all the bureaucracy. So my devs were hardly getting any emails because whilst they were exposed to the customer as much as we could, and brought into meetings and planning and so on, day to day, I was there at stand-up, and I was there in the office doing all the other stuff that I needed to do. And if they needed me, they'd bring me over and say, what do you think of this? Or can you help clarify this? But I wasn't I'm not a coder, so I wasn't sitting down doing any coding. But sometimes they'd ask me to come and sit with them and just, help clarify something that might not have been clear until they've got into the detail.
Now, were you readily available to the team all the time, or because I have kind of a theory about product people interacting with software and the ability to move things forward well, and like in that theory, I think the more frequently the product owner or product person is available to the team, the faster the team can move forward, because then there's that question and answer cycle. So like, what was the dynamic like? Did people have to wait to talk to you often, or were you just available all the time? How did that look?
So I wasn't a full-time product owner. So my as well as the dev team, I was also leading the content team. And in the last few years, we did recruit a dedicated product owner that reported to me and helped out with some of the work. So I wasn't 100% full-time, but I'd like to think I wasn't the classic absent product owner. There were a couple of times in retrospective where the team would say, we really needed to get hold of you in the last sprint and we just couldn't. You were pretty busy, because I was at countless meetings doing other things. But generally, it also came down to, making sure that we had good time and good, well-written stories that were clear for the team to understand. But absolutely know that the product owner needs to be available as much as possible. So awesome. I'd like to think I was there when they needed me. Honestly, I wasn't always there when they needed me, but as much as I could be. But I'm absolutely an advocate for a full-time product owner role, because that would have been really helpful.
Yeah, and that's understandable. We've seen in our mix with mobbing and product people interactions, some are in the mob a lot, some are available almost all the time, and some have lots of other responsibilities. And so, yeah, the context drives certain, behaviors, and that's understandable. And like you said, iterating towards the fully available product owner that's available to the mob or the team at any time is great. And what I love about this story is, I think that's unique, is this is all coming from the product owner's perspective of a team adopting mob programming. And it was really fascinating to hear your internal dialogue, because I'm sure that's what every product person, goes through, because it's, with certain ideas of efficiency, maybe resource versus flow and all that kind of stuff, it might seem crazy. And so you talked about quality, which was fascinating. The quality differences you saw. What was the delivery differences you saw, whether cycle time or throughput? And feel free to be brutally honest here. I mean, it's just a story and what happened for your team. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think there was a period when we were really just in the zone, and I think our first product was launched within like a month and a half, the first iteration, and it was properly iterative. It was a product for it was an online form system for the public to initially report shoplifting, but then the way we focused it was actually saying, what's proper MVP? Get the public reporting. We'll do the back end user management in the database for people to access the reports internally. We didn't add that functionality until about 4 months in, where we could have said, if we'd have taken that classic approach, oh, we'll need all these requirements up front, we'd have never launched it. But then we were literally every sprint, there was new capabilities rolling out, and that was huge for me, and really proud of what the team did. And also, obviously, the team are getting that dopamine hit because they're releasing stuff, and then I'm giving them the data, and they're seeing the data as well, that the public had suddenly, we've launched it, and the public can now report 100 things in this day, and they're seeing the data, and we then get the feedback from the people in the force saying, that's 100 less phone calls we've just had on our phone line. So there's that feedback. And I know a lot of knowledge workers these days don't always get to see the outcome of their work. And I think that's really important for the devs as well. So without going off on a tangent, yeah, I think it wasn't always perfect though. We had some frustrating times where the devs wanted to build something in a certain way, and we went with it. And actually, we did a retrospective afterwards. It was quite a waste of time. But I didn't beat the devs up about it, because, I took their advice. We learned from it. We moved on. So, the danger would have been, they're the smart people, not me. Well, how could I tell them how to configure things? So, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question there, Austin. I felt I rambled a little bit.
No. That was great, because I think, some people come at it more from a quantitative approach, and some it's more qualitative. And I think the beauty of what you just shared is that, whether you're doing sprints or whatever your release cycle is, value is being given, and you're getting feedback, validating or, invalidating the value that was being delivered. And I think that's the main thing, right? Is you deliver, you get feedback, and then you repeat, right? And so I think that's fantastic. That really helps a lot. Yeah, and you talked a little bit earlier about the police domain, and you said, which is interesting to think, that it was a driver for agility, because there's changing needs, basically, often. Anything else that you felt is unique to the police domain, where Agile or mobbing played a piece in that?
Yeah, so some of my ex-colleagues might shoot me for saying this, but policing is generally, there's not a lot of long-term planning, although they try. They do try, but it's hard. The government funding changes, suddenly your budgets are cut. You've got national projects and programs going on that say you must do this by this date, and then they're late, and then you've got the operational layer on top, which is, suddenly someone's been murdered, we need to put all resources into this, or the governing body have said this now to be a priority. So it's actually a very fluid, operationally heavy organization, as you would imagine. So planning is hard. So actually for me, Agile fitted in perfectly to say, well, change is an opportunity, not a threat. And that's a mantra that I try and say as much as I can. And it's human nature to see change as a threat. I get that. But actually, if we were in a position as a team to say, we need to stop what we're developing right now, because there's a much more important priority now to serve the public and help the public with this particular issue. Because we were working in an iterative approach, we haven't lost 6 months of planned work. We've lost a sprint's work, or we've changed course. So I think it fitted in really well. And actually going from a team that was seen as never delivering, always late, to a team that could always deliver and was praised by many, many people in the organization, to the point that I actually got asked to do some training for other parts of the organization, HR, facilities and estates, corporate communications. They asked me to go and teach them about this Agile stuff we were doing. And actually, you probably heard of Modern Agile, a guy called, I'm a massive fan of that. We had a big printout of that on the wall, and I said, this is how we work as a team. This is all we need to know, and this is all we need to do. So I've kind of became quite evangelical about it, almost preaching this to these other teams, but they saw it working. They said, your team are always able to help and deliver, and they get it done. And this goes beyond the devs. This was also the other team members I had. So that influence spread, and that's part of my business now, is actually helping organizations with this kind of thinking. And for me, it's about the thinking. It's not about the processes. That's why Modern Agile's framework free, isn't it? It's do what works for the team.
That's great. And
you can tell I'm passionate about it because it's transformational.
Yeah, well, it's a good segue, I think, to our next topic, which is agile thinking. So you talked about your kind of early transformation, having the book on the shelf but not really reading it, and then kind of reading it and gaining more understanding. What do you have to say about agile thinking in general, and maybe advice that you'd be giving to people that are at different stages of their journey, I guess, their own journey?
So, I mean, I'm picking up what I've learned from speaking at conferences, meeting other people in the agile space, and obviously I've pretty stuck in the police for 20 years, so I haven't lived the world outside that as much. But what I've learned is you can't have just the processes and think that you're agile because you have stand-up meetings, or even you do mobbing. If you haven't got the mindset right to go with it, you're screwed, frankly, because I've heard so many organizations and people working for organizations that say, oh, we're agile, because they think they're following the process. But actually, well, you're agile, but the bosses don't like to give the team control. So the senior people of the organization say, oh, we must be agile because that's what everyone's doing. So they get in trainers and teach you how to be agile. But then they realize that, oh, this means empowering our staff to self-manage and make their own decisions. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. So I think the leaders need to actually be good leaders. And that's what I aspired to be with my team, to say, they're the smart people. I'll let them decide how to solve the problem. It's not my job. They want to use some new latest cutting edge tech, then that's up to them, not me. All I care about is that they've got the environment to be the best they can be, as close to solving problems for the customer as they can be. And that's frankly all that matters. So for me, it's that mindset, and it's linked to good leadership and good product owners. So probably segue on to the whole topic of estimates, because I'd also written no estimates and no projects on the wall, which did miff a few people. We do projects in the police. But the point was, actually, digital isn't a project. My team was about normalizing change and not treating it as a separate add-on. Mm-hmm. And the estimates for us became not about I know different teams follow different approaches. We kept estimates, but only for the purpose of estimating complexity. I didn't care about tracking burn down charts or anything like that. It was actually, this is a 7. That means it's too big. We need to break it down. That's all our estimates were for within the team by the end. Because I said, I learned early on the hard way. I became obsessed. 2 points down on the last sprint. What the hell's going on? Of course, the devs started to hate me. So yeah, luckily I changed my approach to that.
What,
But I
what
know a
was
lot of
the
people, because they want deadlines, and
yeah?
we know software development's really hard.
What was the catalyst for you to change your opinion on tracking tracking points per sprint and things like that? Like, what caused you to stop obsessing about the burn down?
When I realized that it was wrong all the time was the start.
Okay.
That it wasn't an accurate measurement of progress.
Mm-hmm.
And there was little value. And I found myself, it was micromanagement, essentially, which isn't what the kind of leader I wanted to be. So, the devs worrying about me pacing the room because the story points, that drives the wrong behavior, because the devs are then going to start to rush things, cut corners, code quality suffers. So if we keep the code quality as the guiding principle, everything else feeds out of that. So my job as a product owner was, how can I create an environment for my team to be super successful, give them what they need, protect them from all the noise and crap and politics. And it paid off. And the mobbing stuff, I mean, I guess the testament to it was quite hard to recruit developers into the police, because a lot of we know developers, so it's probably the same in where you are, but in the UK, devs aren't looking for jobs. They have to be poached out of jobs because there's not enough devs for all the jobs. So it was a hard sell. So police, what are the police doing with developers? So we had to get recruitment agencies to come and get them in and meet the team and see our office with post-its, classic Agile post-its on the wall. Yeah, but this is going on in the police. And actually, I had 2 of my devs left. We had very low turnover within the team because they had a really good environment. The pay wasn't the best, but rewarding work and a good way of working and all the stuff hopefully I've talked about. You'd have to speak to the devs. I'm obviously slightly biased. But we had 2 devs leave for significantly more money. They were drawn by an offer of more cash, both within the space of a month of each other, and both of them within 2 weeks asked for their old job back, and we got them back.
Wow.
The 2 left and they both came back.
Yeah.
It wasn't all about the money.
Yeah, it's not all about the money, for sure. And there are some pretty terrible environments that people can work in. And I think a big piece of why I like talking about some of the successes that we've had in the past is that as a community, I think we're making software development a more humane industry to work in at times too. And so, because people do get mistreated at certain jobs, especially when people are paid so much that they feel like it would be impossible to leave that job as well. So yeah, it's an interesting viewpoint on it. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I really loved a few things what you're saying about, about trusting the teams. And it reminded me of a quote from the Accelerate book, which is probably quoting Deming or something like that. But it was like, knowledge is power. So give the power to the people who have the knowledge, you know what I mean? And so, that seemed really clear what you're talking about. And the whole estimates thing kind of reminded me of, I guess it's kind of a proverb of, first things first, you know what I mean? And so, and I think what you described to me was like, what you were focused on at one time was, it's important and it's significant, right? But when you put the first things first, everything else just started to come into place and into line. And then that was a cool thing for me. And I guess maybe kind of going back to the knowledge is power thing. What are things you did to protect the development team so they were able to do what they were doing? Like, what are some specific examples that come to mind in this sequence of events?
So I guess a lot of it was, and the organization maybe, let me get my words out, I'm trying to think. So by the end, the devs were literally programming 95% of the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And well, not just, and I don't mean hands on keyboard, because I would also say to the team, I don't care if you spend 90% of the sprint having a conversation and the rest coding. It's about the outcome at the end. It's not about hands on keyboards, because they're problem solving. So the discussion is the most important bit. Yeah. So my job was to give them the space to do that. I guess the best example was they weren't stuck in their inboxes dealing with all the other noise and stuff that's going on in the organization. Now, the organization probably wouldn't like me saying that, because there's organizational news and information, and you need to read these announcements from the chief constable on the intranet and all these things. But most of my dev team hardly ever went on the intranet. And you could argue they could have essentially been outsourced then, because they were part of the organization, but they were probably the most detached from the organization. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because they were close to the customer as much as they could be, but they weren't having to deal with all that corporate stuff, if that makes sense. I was dealing with that. That was my job. It didn't mean we didn't bring people in from the workforce to come and sit with them and work with them, but it was just about protecting them from all the workflow as it's described, i.e. all the noise about preparing stories and all that stuff. That was my job. It was about let them have their space to be great devs. Does that help? Does that make sense?
No, that helps a lot. And I think, and what I sense there's probably a lot of discernment and contextual decisions, because if you're optimizing for flow efficiency, right, that doesn't mean you lock people away and leave them alone, right? But you provide them, kind of going back to put first things first, the most important information they need to deliver value. You have that, and that is their focus, right? And what's the most important thing, not the 20 things that come after it or 20 other things people are asking for, right? And so I think there's that discernment on, when it's something the team should know because this is a customer interaction and this is good for them to get the persona, or when it's not important right now. What's priority one? And so I think maybe there's an art to that, and maybe you have more to add to figure out what's pertinent and what's not to shield the team from, and let the team receive. And maybe I'll turn to you, Chris, because I think this is something you deal with quite a bit, right? Because you're not in the product role, but you are in the role of maybe an amoeba of some sort of
the amoeba of protection.
Yeah. So.
No, I'll just say that there's definitely lots of noise and or things that can distract the team in one way or another, and some of that is really important to get done, and some of it isn't really, right? And some of it can be delayed, and some of it needs to be done immediately. And having somebody to be able to put those into those buckets, can really help a lot, just because, if you have to meet or read something every 5 minutes and then you're taken away from the discussions all the time, then that can be really damaging to flow of the team. And anything that'll thrash a team, make them change context, those sorts of things. It's really important to just let the work be as contiguous as possible, as it's working. So I definitely hear that.
Yeah, and maybe one follow-up question is, one thing I've seen just in my mobbing experience is anytime someone comes into the team who has maybe a little bit of product experience or maybe a little bit of coaching experience, they'll do that filtering with the team as a mob sometimes. And it's a good learning moment to be like, hey, I know people are asking about why, but why is not important right now. We're going to focus on X, and we're going to say thank you for the feedback, and we're going to move on, and kind of like model kind of that product owner or product manager ability to really carefully say no to a lot of things to focus on the one thing. Did you ever do that kind of thing in front of your team? Or was that kind of more, they didn't have to deal with it at all? And either answer is good.
Yeah, so there's a story I can share that was quite powerful for me and in terms of a lesson learned. We were presented with some work that my team didn't feel we needed to do, and because I can't go into too much detail, but essentially we already had the problem solved 95%, and the team, like, I'd written the stories because there was a very senior stakeholder that had asked for this, and written the stories and presented to the team, and they were like, we think we've already done this. We're struggling to see the value here. And I said, okay, well, let's bring in not the person asking for it, but the messenger asking for it. So not the most senior person. I'm being very careful here. Can you, I said, I'll bring them in and we'll come and chat to the devs so they can hear it. Because, I was just the intermediary here whilst I was the product owner. Why not get this person asking for it and sit with the team? And we debated for on and off for days. And actually, I probably didn't protect the team as much as I should, but I wanted this person to have the discussion with the team. And I totaled probably about 8 hours of discussion time. And it came to it and we were like, look, we just got to do it. The senior person's asked for it. We just do it. And it's one of my biggest mistakes in my career was doing that, because we wasted 3 months development time building this thing. We launched it. Public take-up was minimal, hardly worked at all. A month later, it was scrapped. Now, my lesson there was I should have frankly grown a pair and gone to speak to this very senior person and say, I've got alarm bells here and my team are telling me we don't think this is a problem that needs solving. And knowing the person now that I do, it would have been fine. They'd have gone, that's fine. So I take responsibility for that as the lead and product owner. I've wasted 3 months dev time. But again, lesson learned, listen to the team. They are usually right. They're the ones who know this in and out, even better than the product owner in some cases, and certainly was in that case. So yeah, that was an example that's really stuck with me. And it was demoralizing for the team because they'd wasted 3 months and they never said to me, we told you so, but I know they were thinking it.
Yeah. And I mean, all kinds of strange things like that happen through our careers. And the important thing is to learn from it and be able to use it as an example going forward. As long as it stays in the organizational memory, then things can go really well. I think one thing that we had seen in the past, the kind of a similar story, 3 months of work scrapped, was a product owner, a stakeholder delegating a product owner, and the product owner and the team kind of never showing the results of it to anyone but that product owner. Product owner was really happy until all the other stakeholders saw the item, and then it was a catastrophe at that point. And very shortly after that was, and so this is one of the reasons why ensuring that all stakeholders have an opportunity to see things, whether or not they intend to engage, is really important to me. So I feel like, while those two stories aren't the same, it resonates a lot with me, because I think that those are some of the most impactful lessons, and possibly more expensive ones as well.
Yeah. And it highlights for me that, that classic proverb, build the right thing, build it right. And so it's easy for me, especially with my love for extreme programming and refactoring, to just camp out in the build it right, but how important it is to, spread these stories and share these experiences and help build up skills in the team. Because you can have a phenomenal, build it right category, but if you're building the wrong thing, it's a problem. And so I think spreading those skills within the team, and I've seen those skills grow within mobs when people are more skilled at that, and working with stakeholders and customers to get the right kind of feedback and the right kind of analytics, or the right kind of interactions to discover what is right, or the right delivery frequency to find out. And and I think I just love that that skill can grow. And we've all been there when it hasn't gone well. So right on. And I think we are getting kind of close to our time box, but this has been phenomenal, Scott. I have more questions for you, but maybe we'll pick it up on social media or something else. But before we close out the show, is there anything you'd like to share or plug?
I've wrote a blog a few years ago that was, and it's titled "How Do You Measure the Productivity of Your Development Team?" And it was something I was asked by someone quite senior when I was going to ask for some more resources. And I think your audience will find it quite interesting. So if it's all right to share the link with your audience, that would be appreciated. I think they'll get some value from it.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in the show notes. And thanks again for being on the show. And to our audience, if you're feeling inspired and you want to share this with someone who might learn more about good product management and good interactions with the mob, and maybe mobbing and Agile from a product person's perspective, please share this episode with them. Please like and subscribe. And we love hearing your feedback. on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and more. And so until next time, mob well, everyone, and have a good one. Bye.
Hi, everybody.